ever so much a lady to him, like a fragile flower. He'd found that ridiculously attractive. Until tonight. Christ, even roses had thorns, he thought, as Lacey released another shuddering whimper. Mouth tightening despite the pain it caused, Jack shifted his attention to the rest of the room, looking for something to help them out of this. His eyes had adjusted to the darkness, but it didn't help. Unfortunately, their captors hadn't thoughtfully left a weapon lying about, or anything that might be used to remove his ropes. It was just a large, empty room, the only furniture the chair he was tied to, and the only light came from the streetlights outside. Not much of it was making its way through the filthy windows. They were probably in an old abandoned government building, or one of the empty structures at or near the university, he thought, and then let the thought drift away as unimportant. It didn't matter where they were, if he couldn't get loose and get them out of there. Jack's gaze slid back to Lacey as she whimpered again, and he was about to try one more time to convince her to at least flee for help and save herself, if not him, when the sound of rusty hinges announced a door opening and the return of their captors.
Awake, I see.
Jack considered closing his eyes and pretending he'd passed out again, but doubted it would work. So instead, he raised his chin and glared defiantly at the speaker. Grizzly Adams, as he'd come to call him because he was huge with a lot of facial hair, was leading 4 men toward him while 4 more were spreading out around the room to keep an eye out the windows. Just to be sure they weren't caught by surprise by someone hearing his screams of pain and approaching the building, Jack supposed.
Your boss still not here?
He asked with more bravado than curiosity, although the attempt at bravado made a poor showing with his words coming out slurred and somewhat garbled by his swollen mouth and possibly broken jaw.
Nope. He's been delayed,
Grizzly Adams said with a grin.
Good news, right? Means we get to play a little longer.
Since getting to play meant Grizzly Adams could continue to pummel his face and chest with his big, meaty fists while Jack sat there helplessly taking the blows and trying not to scream as he waited to pass out from the pain, he didn't really see that as a good thing. He'd almost prefer for the boss, whoever that was, to show up and kill him, or whatever the end game was. It seemed obvious he wasn't going to escape. Might as well get it over with. Although it would be nice to know what this was all about. Grizzly Adams wasn't talking, however. All he'd say is the boss wanted to tell him himself. Obviously, it had something to do with his work. The boss was probably someone he'd put away at some point in his career, or a relative of someone he'd put away, and it would be nice to know why he was going to die. Jack's thoughts were scattered by an explosion of pain in his chest as Grizzly Adams delivered his first blow and, he was sure, broke another one of his ribs. Christ, the man had fists like bowling balls. The impact and pain brought a broken woof of sound from him, but made Lacey shriek like they were connected and she felt the pain. He'd barely noted that when a second blow landed, this one to the already broken jaw. It sent his face turning sharply to the right. Stars exploding in front of his eyes, Jack had to blink to clear his vision enough to see when a door burst open at the end of the room. It flew inward, crashing against the wall with the impact of an explosion, raising dust and dirt in a cloud that partially obscured the figure now standing in the doorway. At first, Jack assumed the boss had arrived, but as the dust storm settled and he took in the silhouette framed against the streetlight pouring into the room, he realized it was a woman, and a very shapely one at that. Which didn't mean it couldn't be the boss, he supposed, but the reactions of his captors made it clear it wasn't. For 1 second, they were all tense and silent with shock, like himself. But then they each relaxed and even began to smile,